Hey everybody, got some new cards to look at today from Bilgewater and Noxus. Let's take a look. First up, we have 2 mana 3/1 Daring Demolisher for Noxus. Play, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus, or activate an ally's Plunder effect. So that's going to be Plunder in Noxus. Noxus and Bilgewater have paired in the past, but Plunder has not been an effect that you see in Noxus. Although Noxus is pretty good at activating it. If you don't remember, Plunder is if you've dealt damage to the enemy Nexus this turn, then any Plunder effects will activate on play. Summon? Play. Summon. It's on summon, I think. But in any case, Daring Demolisher is either going to deal 1 damage to the enemy Nexus, which is great for aggro, or good for proccing a subsequent Plunder, or you are able to play it onto something that has already entered play and do its Plunder again, which is really cool. There's some high-end Plunder stuff that would be pretty neat to just be able to activate again, whether that be doubling the stats of everything in your deck with the Tusk Raider, the ship for Sejuani in Freljord, or lowering the cost of all the units in your hand and deck with Smooth Soloist, or even just Riptide Rex if you just want to win the game on the spot instead of all this late game value nonsense in your Plunder deck. Yeah, Daring Demolisher, very cool. Great enabler, and is there to, I think, cement Noxus as the new, as a new Plunder region. So then we have Father Fury, which is from Bilgewater. This being a 2 mana 2/1 elusive. Plunder, refill 1 spell mana, and create a random 1-cost spell from your regions in your hand. So that's solid. 2 mana 2/1 elusive is just going to be pretty solid for aggro, getting elusives in. It's going to be good for proccing future plunders. If you're able to plunder the turn you play it, you get a little bit of a refund, which is pretty nice. As well as creating random spell, which can be, I mean, it's a 1-cost spell. Helpful. Bilgewater cares about that kind of thing every now and then. Would you see this in Spells Matter decks like Fizz or Nami? I think you would. I think Fizz actually likes Father Fury a lot. Refilling that spell mana, creating the random 1-cost spell. Really good for both of those. So I think decent in Plunder, pretty good in spell ping type decks with Fizz. I think Father Fury is going to find a place. And just being a 2/1 elusive, not too shabby, especially when it's all front loaded with an enter play effect, and after that, it's just gravy. Next up, 4 mana 1/5 elusive Inferna. Well, it's for Bilgewater. Let's not be distracted by that art, and instead take a look at when you activate Plunder, draw 1 and give it fleeting. So when you activate Plunder is not damaging the enemy Nexus. It's when you play something with Plunder after you've activated the enemy Nexus. So Inferna is going to want to swing, hit that 1 damage, and then you start playing Plunder cards, and you're drawing cards, and you're able to kind of refill. So she is kind of like a draw refill engine for a aggro type system because you're drawing fleeting stuff. So you're not going to be wanting to run Inferna with anything too expensive. At least not a majority of things too expensive. You're going to want to mostly chain inexpensive Plunder cards. pretty cool in that kind of deck. It's definitely going to be a deck that's going to have a lot of card draw and cycling and the ability to fill your board with either plunder units, cheap plunder units, or uh, be able to cast some cheap plunder spells, which is pretty nice. Dame the Despoiler, 3 mana, 3/3, and we're back to Noxus. Plunder, grant all allies +1/+0. So this is the first plunder we see in Noxus itself, and it is just helping a go wide strategy in Noxus, which has kind of always been a thing. It's most often been a thing with P&Z with discard. That was the original one, but it does exist with the kind of pirate strategy of going wide. So Dame the Spoiler, I think, just fits into kind of a pirate aggro strategy. If you're going wide and you're able to hit the enemy nexus for damage, you're going to want Dame to come in. Ideally, you want this to happen before you attack. So either hitting the enemy nexus with a spell, or even just playing Daring Demolisher first. Although the ideal thing, of course, is to play Dame the Despoiler, or hit the enemy nexus, play Dame, then play Daring Demolitioner, and activate Dame again. And suddenly you have a very scary board. You're just going to want to run some kind of spell effect, or possibly Scout to be able to hit the enemy nexus before you actually declare your big attack. Dame also wants you to have a wide board, of course. She wants to enter play onto a wide board. But let's take a look at the next set of cards. Actually, before that, there's going to be a new keyword on one of these cards, Brash. Brash units can only be blocked by enemies with 3 or more health. So it's like Fearsome, except it's going off of health instead of attack. But it's a little bit more complicated than that in practice, because damage lowers health. The damage does not lower attack. So Brash, it is very possible for you to do like a Make It Rain, and then suddenly the enemy board can't block your Brash units. So, yeah, I think Brash is going to be a very interesting keyword. Freljord's going to do pretty well by it, since they actually have plenty of ways to increase health. But a lot of regions that rely on increasing attack may have a hard time with Brash. We'll see how that works out. Glory in Navori. The next thing, we got Barbed Chains for 4 mana burst in Bilgewater. Plunder, I cost 2 less, so 2 mana after Plunder. That's pretty good. Draw 2 at next round start and give them fleeting. Okay. So we know, we're pretty certain, unless something has changed that we haven't been told about, that Twisted Fate is going to rotate out. What part of Twisted Fate's package is going to rotate with the champion, we don't know. But if Pick a Card is leaving, Barbed Chain is kind of a replacement. Rather than shuffling a card back into your deck in order to draw some fleeting cards next turn, Barbed Chain is just going to give you the card draw, but you want that Plunder so that you're paying a reasonable price for 2 fleeting cards. Next up, we have Pirouette in 2 mana in Noxus, slow. Plunder, I cost 1 less, so you can get it to cost 1. And it is deal 1 to anything, and then stun an enemy. So you can use this to hit the enemy nexus, and stun an enemy for an attack. You can use it to, finish off an enemy and stun something. It's pretty versatile. It is 2 mana to activate Plunder if you need to. But if you've already activated Plunder, then you can use it to stun to set up the attack. So I think the Plunder costing 1 less probably not going to happen most of the time. Pirouette is going to work mostly, I think, as a way to activate Plunder and stun something to get ready for your to let you play a unit and then attack. The fact that it's happening at slow is giving the opponent a lot of time to handle stuff. But if you're using it defensively, I think it has a use there too. If it's not your attack token turn, I think, yeah, not your attack token turn is definitely the main time you'll want to use this. You'll play Pirouette to stun an enemy unit that you don't want to attack and punish development, uh, while also dealing 1 to anything, which will most likely be the enemy Nexus, to proc Plunder for a non-attack turn. And you can use that to actually play the Dame the Despoiler on not your attack turn so that you can open attack and things like that. So I think Pirouette is probably going to most often be used on defensive turns to allow you to still plunder when you don't have the attack token and keep up your plunder tempo instead of having to rely on attacks for plunder. So Pirouette, I think, is actually going to get see use. It seems like that is very useful for 2 mana stun and proc plunder. And if you have, I mean, if it costs 1 less, hey, that's cool. You could use it offensively to get rid of a blocker, but most of the time, I think you're going to use it defensively. Brazen Buccaneer. This is that brash unit. 3 mana, 3/2. Plunder. Summon a random 1-cost follower and grant it brash. So we've seen that kind of thing before. Summoning random 1-cost followers happens all the time in Bilgewater. Sometimes they're granted things like Scout. In this case, they're being granted Brash, which is going to make it potentially harder to block depending on what the opponent's deck is doing. If the stat line for Brash tends to be things like 3/2s and higher attack, lower health, then Brash is going to be a very good counter to Fearsome. Because Fearsome units tend to have high attack, low health, because they're hoping to not get blocked. Whereas Brash units having high attack and low health because they're hoping not to get blocked, they're going to be able to block Fearsomes if they need to, whereas Fearsomes are just not flat out not going to be able to block Brash. So Brash is looking like it's going to be a pretty good keyword. This has been a mix of Bilgewater and Noxus cards, but I think we are most likely going to get Samira next for a couple reasons. If you look at all of these guys thematically, they seem fighters and mercenary types, a lot of them being female as well. I think that's kind of what they're going for with Samira's followers, it looks like. None of them were especially fishy to go with Jack, even though they were Bilgewater. And additionally, they, on Twitter today, announced there's going to be a kind of like little mini tournament where some content creators are being assigned to the 3 champions being released. And what they showed, I believe, yesterday, Set, the people that are going to be on Set's team, and then they showed Samira's today. So it's not guaranteed, but it's a pretty safe bet that they're following the same order that they are revealing the actual champions in. So we can expect to see Samira tomorrow, and you'll be able to see some discussion on it on my channel tomorrow, as well as once everything is out, you can expect me to put out a lore video for what story we can see from what's happening here. Because we can already see that Samira and Jack have come to Set's fighting pits in Navori, but maybe we'll be able to see why. It's only the beginning of this expansion, but should be some interesting stuff. LOR has some pretty interesting lore. But in any case, I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a good one. And I think we can all say we're looking forward to these cards. Have a good one.